Hey everybody, it's time to swing with Still Swinging, and I'm your host, Thomas. And today, family, we got Piers Morgan up. Okay, on this episode of Piers Morgan, they got into a heated debate over the P Diddy verdict. Now, on his panel of guests, we had lawyer Tony Buzbee, who represented the young lady who levied the false allegations against Jay-Z just recently, and who now has over 100 lawsuits levied at P Diddy presently. Okay, also on the panel was DJ Vlad. DJ Vlad had this same stance ever since I remember him talking about it during the whole course of the trial. So he is absolutely not one of those guys who all of a sudden took a stand once the verdict came out. No, DJ Vlad been saying this the whole way. And also he had Eshter Cratchette. Eshter Cratchette, in my opinion, is an extreme ethnicist liberal. But you decide for yourself, fellas. And look, we're going to take this walk with Piers Morgan and his panel of guests through their reactions of the Diddy verdict. Check it out, family. Smash that like button. If you're not subscribed, make sure you become a subscriber, because y'all know I be bringing it. Fair use. Fair use.
Debate all this, I'm joined by Tony Buzbee, the attorney representing Diddy victims in civil suits, DJ Vlad, commentator and host of Vlad TV, and our very own uncensored contributor, Eshter Cratchette. Esther, as we listened to that, what were you thinking?
I mean, what she said at the end there was very poignant. This is not a Diddy problem. This is an industry problem. I do find it quite telling that she said she was brutalized as well in the similar fashion that Cassie was. And then within 48 hours, the tape vanished. And I think a lot of the fault has to be laid at the nature of the system. We used to say that.
Context. Fellas, the earlier program on the Piers Morgan show was the Corinne Stephan. And Corinne Stephan, a.k.a. Super HEAD, said that what happened to Cassie happened to her also in the industry on a few occasions. But the tape vanished in 48 hours. And that's why DJ Vlad looked at her when she brought up Corinne Stephan's, aka Super HEAD, as a reference to who point of view we supposed to take as what's going on in this industry right now. That's why Vlad looked at her like that, like, listen, this lady been known to tell a whole bunch of stories. All right, stories that we could prove didn't happen. You see how that story got her on the Piers Morgan show? Okay, Piers Morgan wouldn't have wanted to talk to her if she wasn't going to tell the story she told. Okay, and she been known to tell stories for profit.
The nature of the system. We used to say that all you need is consent, whether it's you sign consent or yes, we're good to go. But actually, when you contextualize it, these women that, okay, yes, they are drawn in by the glamour of being with someone like P Diddy or a high-profile person. You can choose the names. They are drawn into the system, but nothing means that they deserve to be beaten up and treated like ragdolls in the way that Cassie and arguably this lady said. And so we need to be looking at the cultural issue as well. That's the fundamental issue. It's not just about you sign a piece of paper and you can make an NDA, keep you quiet or whatever. The culture is telling women that actually you can be treated this way because you happen to be in this space, and all that keeps everything above board is the legality. And unfortunately, the culture is our problem. It's not the problem of the federal prosecutors. It's the problem of us as a society, the PAs, the people that are handling their press releases, the lawyers, everyone. They are part of the culture, that culture of subservience, and allowing these people to do things that are legally above board, but are horrible and just quite vile.
Okay, fellas, so if we let Miss Eshter Cratchette tell it, we're supposed to ignore all of Cassie's behavior and everything she did and point to that tape and say that's the reason why she done it, when that tape happened once. And it been hundreds of incidents with this young lady. Hundreds. And we can't just ignore the testimony that we heard, like you did. Okay, and pointed to that tape as the reason why. No, clearly that tape is an isolated incident with what happened with those two and was not a focal point of their relationship. If you listen to this young lady, we ought to just skip over the fact that Cassie was there because she was trying to gain something from Diddy. And she was doing a lot of this stuff because she thought she could gain what she wanted from Diddy. She wanted to be famous. She wanted to be his woman. And she thought this would get her that. If we listen to this lady, we need to ignore all of that and point to that tape as the reason for why she doing it. So the culprit could be the big bad man. And the woman don't have to take no accountability. Because you can trust and believe that this lady even found a reason why Corinne Steffen is also a victim. All right, all of these big bad men are the problem, according to Eshter Cratchette. All right, these brothers are what's wrong.
And just quite vile. I feel sorry for Cassie because I do think the prosecutors misled her. The case was very, very shoddy on many levels. You can't have a conspiracy with just one person. That's not a conspiracy, that's a thought. And so I think in many ways that case was always going to fall through. But I do think that these girls have been let down by a culture that has boiled down appropriate behavior to just legality and consent.
Okay, DJ Vlad, you posted on X after the verdicts came in. Cassie is guilty of the same prostitution charges Diddy was just convicted of. I interviewed 3 of the male escorts. All 3 of them said the same thing. Cassie picked them, contacted them for free costs, enjoyed the experiences and paid them. Meanwhile, she's sitting on $30 million and writing letters to the judge asking him not to give Diddy bail. I'm pretty clear.
I mean, personally, I think she should be charged with the same thing that Diddy was charged with. Ultimately, he was convicted of prostitution. She was involved in the prostitution. Every male escort that I talked to said that she was the one picking the actual male prostitutes. She would book them. She enjoyed every experience. She was sort of guiding the whole thing while they were together, and she was the one that actually paid them. Ultimately, this is a domestic violence case that's ballooned into a RICO and sex trafficking and so forth. What Diddy did to Cassie in that hallway was absolutely horrible, but that is not what the trial was about. It was about RICO. It was about sex trafficking, neither of which made sense in this particular trial. And if you want to actually convict him for prostitution, Cassie is just as liable for that same prostitution that Diddy got convicted of, but she was given immunity in the whole situation. So I just feel it's really just a messed up situation.
That's a completely ridiculous stance because you know what the consequences of her, not booking those prostitutes? We saw it in that hallway in the hotel, in an international chain hotel that were happy to take $50,000 to wipe it off the face of the earth. Those are the
If you listen to this lady right here, we need to ignore everything Cassie done and just look at that tape. When we know what happened during that tape is one incident of hundreds of these incidents that Cassie performed. Okay? We only know of one time that this happened. All right, but it's been proven that this happened she done this on hundreds of occasions. All right, in all accounts, she was performing it at her best and at her own free will. But we need to forget about all of that and the fact that she was trying to gain something out of this and point to that tape as the reason why she completely innocent and ain't have no free will involved at all, and skip the fact that she gained everything and lost nothing. All right. And she trying to destroy the man she felt like broke her heart and destroyed her dreams. We need to forget about all of that because she didn't become famous and she didn't stay as woman. So we need to forget all of that, right? Forget all of that and point to that tape as the reason for Cassie behavior. We won't do it, man. We will not do it, and neither would the jury, because we sound thinking people, and we know that's not the case. That's the case if we let you tell it.
dollars to wipe it off the face of the earth. Those are the consequences. If she hadn't done that, it is very likely that she would have been manhandled in that way, even in the street, and someone would have been able to wipe the footage of that. I appreciate the fact that
she hold on. Case, which has nothing to do with
I appreciate the fact that she
was not charged with domestic violence. You're talking about a totally different situation.
I guess the question, Vlad, I guess the question that Esther's posing there really is, did she go along so apparently consensually with all the freak-off stuff, with all these escorts, because she
admitted to that?
Well, hang on. My question is, did she go along with it in the apparently consensual way because she was in fear of retribution from Diddy in a way we saw with the beating?
No, I don't think so. At the end of the day, this was an artist that had one hit song 20-something years ago. She had the ability to leave at any point.
But according to this lady, we need to forget this, that all of this was the route she chose to take to try to be famous. And if she couldn't be as famous as she wanted to be his woman so she could still live that jet set life, it ended for her. All right, it ended for her. This young lady, Miss Eshter Cratchette, would like us to forget all about all of that and point to that tape as the reason she did it, and not of her own free will, because she was looking to gain something.
She had the ability to leave at any point. She was signed to a label, but labels leave artists that don't react constantly. She could have went. She stayed because she wanted to be in that particular situation. Now, people are going to argue with me and so forth, but at the end of the day, she stayed because there was no one else that was offering her a record deal. There's no one else that was spending millions of dollars on her. There's no one else that was showering her with gifts. So she decided to stay. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when the money ran out, when she married a broke fitness trainer and had to go move back in with her parents, and the money completely ran out, then it's like, okay, let's sue Diddy and let's get $20 million out of him. That is my take on it. That's always been my take. That always will be my take.
Vlad went hard, didn't he? He telling the truth, fellas. He ain't telling nothing but the truth.
That is my take on it. That's always been my take. That always will be my take.
Okay, Tony Buzbee, let me bring you in here. Just first off, what do we think is going to happen to Diddy here? What sentence are you anticipating?
I'm expecting 2 to 4 years. I would expect. I mean, he's not going to get 20 years. Obviously, he's already has time served. There's going to be some mitigating factors. He doesn't have a prior record. However, there are some issues within the case that might be reasons for the judge to go a little bit higher than perhaps normal. But I would expect 2 to 4 years. What
is your feeling? You've obviously represented many Diddy.
If Diddy gets sentenced within that time frame, expect him to come straight home on home confinement. All right, because that's how the federal system been working out for guys lately. When they got them short sentences like that, a lot of them can go straight to home confinement. And he gonna go straight to home confinement if he get a sentence like that. And I honestly believe he's gonna get a sentence like that. So I believe right after he gets sentenced, he's gonna be getting right out.
You represented many Diddy victims in civil actions. You had over 100 people come to you with various allegations. What impact does this verdict have on the suits that you want to proceed with?
Vlad laughing at him.
Zero. I mean, I was listening to Vlad there for a minute, and I'm sure that same kind of argument took place in the jury room. I mean, people have a hard time putting their head around a situation where somebody might consent one day and not consent the next. And there are people in this world that believe, well, you've consented once, so therefore you're consenting for life. That is not what the law says, and I can understand why there may have been people.
No, what is called, Mr. Buzbee, Mr. Attorney, is reasonable doubt. It's called reasonable doubt. A reasonable person listen to what was presented to him. 12 reasonable people, and came to the same conclusion that this lady was doing this of her own free will. Okay, that's like your wife went to the judge and said, yeah, I told him yes 500 times, but about 2 years ago, I told him no one night, and he kept on doing it. And you saying that didn't happen. And a reasonable person would say, if she did it 499 times, I need to just believe her now that they ain't breaking up and they ain't together no more. A sound mind person would see reasonable doubt. You can't just believe that story. That's what he's saying.
There have been people on that jury that had the same point of view, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that there's a lot of psychological issues here that people really don't understand about trauma bonding and how somebody might feel compelled to do something that they really don't want to do. But even if they said no one time, that is not consent. And I think in this trial, and we didn't have the benefit, or at least I didn't have the benefit of watching it day to day and seeing each witness and hearing how they said the things they said. All I was able to see was the transcript that I would receive on a daily basis. Obviously, the jury thought that the RICO situation was complete baloney. They thought apparently that this was not a RICO situation. There was no conspiracy, and they were trying to put a...
Fellas, that man was on trial fighting for his life over a party, over a big party. He was fighting for his life over a big party. That's scary, fellas.
I did think that, given the testimony that I saw, that there were instances where Cassie and Jane were forced to do things either through financial pressure or through extortion type pressure or through force, things that they did not want to do.
But the interesting thing on that, Tony, is that the jury clearly did not believe either woman when it came to any issue about consensuality. They just didn't believe any of it. I think pretty much across the board, it was clear they had not bought in to the suggestion that any of this was non-consensual.
Why, fellas? Because if you're listening what reasonable is and not what this lady is, you can't reasonably believe that these ladies not willing participants. No way you can believe that. No way. You would have to ignore everything you heard like this lady did.
To the suggestion that any of this was non-consensual.
No question. I mean, I think you're right. And, you know, sometimes juries do things that we don't expect. You know, I go back to whether, you know, each instance that this happened, did he have consent each time? Then I see Vlad's point. There were times when it looks like that Cassie was involved in setting some of these
well,
events.
there's no question of that. I interviewed the Punisher, you know, the guy who gave evidence. He gave very powerful, eloquent evidence. And I've interviewed him several times. He's a very good talker, and he had no real kind of skin in the game. In fact, he was brought from the prosecution to give evidence, but actually ended up being a pretty powerful witness for the defense, it turned out, because what he said was everything was done through Cassie Ventura and seemed very consensual. Went on for over 2 years, you know, a dozen or so encounters in hotels where Diddy just sat in the corner saying nothing. She booked him, she paid him, she organized it. Everything was driven by her. She seemed to have a good time.
Eshter Cratchette, look at her body language. Every time they start giving these ladies some accountability and saying that they don't believe these ladies. Look at her face and her demeanor and how she can barely hold her composure and keep her mouth closed. She just want to start screaming at them to ignore all the evidence and just believe these women that the 499 times might have been consensual, but one of them times might not have been. And you need to point to that tape, and that tape tell you why it wasn't.
Everything was driven by her. She seemed to have a good time. Everyone was happy. I thought that was very powerful evidence, actually, for Diddy, because it seemed to contradict everything that they were trying to position it as, which was this was all coercion.
Let me offer this up. You know, the government settled in on using 2 alleged victims. They used Cassie and they used Jane. Early on, when this all started, we were contacted by the U.S. Attorney, and they asked us, can we speak to some of your clients? So we went to, and they told us, these are the ones we want to speak to. We made those people available. They talked to a couple of those people. But I think by that point, they had decided, their team had decided that they had what they needed. They had the goods, if you will, to proceed with Jane and with Cassie. I think that was a mistake. I will say, as I watched the trial, or at least learned about the trial daily as it went on, I thought the government was doing what they needed to do to get a conviction. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Obviously, they did not believe that they believed that Diddy had consent, and they didn't believe there was a conspiracy. And obviously, the transportation to commit prostitution, that was pretty cut and dried. And I think everybody, no matter which side you fall out on, believed that there would be a conviction there.
But there is a point, isn't there, that which Vlad made, I thought, pretty compellingly, that if you're going to convict Diddy and you don't believe that it was non-consensual and Cassie did all the booking, why is she not being charged? And could it be that the reason that she turned on Diddy was to preempt potentially some legal exposure herself?
Who knows? We'll never know that. They gave her immunity early on, and that's the horse they rode with, and we see what happened.
Well, I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think consent without fear of consequences is not, with fear of consequences, is not actually consent.
I'm sorry, fellas. This lady is triggering me. She starts to trigger me every time her mouth is moving. Okay, I hope she hurries up with this and just be quiet before I jump on her. And y'all know how I jump on her. I'm trying to be nice, fellas.
Consequences is not, with fear of consequences, not actually consent. So if you were going against Cassie, for example, and you're going to try her, all she has to do is show you that video and just say, look at what happens if I didn't do that. Now, I don't think it reached the threshold for the jury for RICO, which I completely understand. Like I said, a conspiracy that involves one is a thought. But this is why I say this is not a problem for the courts. It's a problem for culture and society. Cassie met P Diddy when she was 17 years old. She signed a 10-album deal with P Diddy by the age of like 20 or 21, which is virtually unheard of in this industry. I mean, I'm sorry, she wasn't Beethoven. She didn't have the kind of talent that would warrant that kind of Beethoven. She didn't have the kind of talent that would warrant that kind of record deal. She was clearly groomed. Now, amongst...
Hey, so this lady would like us to believe that Cassie didn't know she ain't no Beethoven, and don't nobody get a deal like this. And she had to be performing exceptional. She got a deal like this from this guy right here, who ain't never gave nobody a deal like this. We gotta excuse Cassie that she got a sweet deal like that she gonna be taken care of all this time. And all she gotta do is be good. And we need to skip over the fact that that's what she was trying to get out of it way before this hotel incident ever happened. And point to that hotel incident as the reason why she done that when she was 20 years old. Okay? Because at 20 years old, she still didn't know no better, did she, Miss Lady?
Now, amongst all of that, could you say she could have got up and left? Okay, arguably, yes.
She was with him 10 years.
Yes, but the thing is, he had
She was with him 10 years, and the Punisher was very clear.
Yes,
She did not give any impression to him of being anything but a very enthusiastic and willing participant. It's quite kinky stuff.
Look at what happened when she tried to break up with him and date, what's his name, the rapper. Who had his car blown up. I mean, it's not that cut and dry. This, I feel like...
Esther, we have lots of chats through the Me Too era and stuff, and obviously one of the things people are saying about this is that, in a way, it signals the beginning of the end of that Me Too movement, because for a long time, everyone was encouraged to believe women accusers. The moment they made allegations, they had to be believed. That was always, to me, a very dangerous proposition. It should always be they should be taken seriously. The allegations should be investigated properly, and then decisions should be made about whether there had been a crime. Very dangerous to believe accusers before you actually know whether they're telling the truth. But here we've got a situation, I think, where if he'd been in this case 3-4 years ago, he would have gone down.
I don't think. I think
the jury, I suspect, has moved with the times.
I think the whole Me Too issue was a separate kind of beast. P Diddy and the environment that he exists in, the hip hop industry, is a completely different kind of sleaze. And also, it was very cut and dry from that video.
Is it though? Is it any different to Harvey Weinstein, who claimed that a lot of what his stuff was transactional? I mean, he was convicted of rape and sexual abuse and so on. So obviously, again, juries didn't agree. But he painted a picture of a lot of kind of transactional relationships with people, right, where he believed this was all part of the sort of casting couch deal. That again has been, that's dinosaur stuff and was outrageous and wrong and everything else. And it turned out to be criminal as well. But I don't think there's much difference in the attitude.
There is a difference. I think hip hop has always come under fire for being quite sleazy. I mean, you can't listen to a hip hop track from 20 years ago without hearing the N word or bitch. It's always been quite sleazy. They've always been quite actually vocal about the fact that they treat women like pieces of meat. And the women, a lot of the time, are happy to be treated that way because they get a lot from it.
Well, okay, so that's interesting, isn't it, Vlad? Because that is part of that hip hop culture. There's no doubt. A lot of women have embraced that kind of, very misogynist language, accepted the violence, and was prepared to stay in the relationship because she enjoyed everything else.
I think there was a very violent relationship. I think it was a drug-fueled relationship. I think there was lots of money and fame and jet-setting involved. At the end of the day, I think what happened to her was horrible. I think that tape showed just how bad the domestic violence was. But at the end of the day, this is not what the trial was about. The trial is about RICO. The trial is about sex trafficking. The trial is about prostitution. In fact, the only reason Diddy got convicted was because it was interstate commerce. All the other male escorts that I've talked to, like, for example, I talked to Don the dealer, who also had multiple sessions with Cassie. She said she was loving it. She was into it. She was setting the direction. At the end of the day, you could stay in a bad relationship, but you decide to stay in that bad relationship. This is really about the domestic violence, but the domestic violence goes back past the statute of limitations. So if you think about it, in this whole case, all the escorts I talked to were not, sent to a different state or a different country. They were all local. Like Don the dealer was in Miami. Punisher was in New York. If all these guys didn't travel across state lines, there would be no case at all. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
And with Tony Buzbee, at the end of the day, like he said, that the feds talked to multiple people that he's representing that were suing, but they decided not to use any of them, which makes me think that there wasn't any real credible, real evidence that they actually did anything wrong in the whole situation. Therefore, there's only two people that were actually used. The only person that was actually that filed a lawsuit that was used in this case was.
Fellas, let me give you the skinny on Tony Buzbee. His job is squeezing brothers. Okay, they afraid of him. All right, and I don't know if it's just brothers he squeezed, but he definitely squeezed the brothers. Vlad better be careful. All right, because he'll be coming for Vlad next. That's why nobody don't play with Tony Buzbee. Why? Because those ladies, they go in police stations every day across the USA and give these stories. Police precincts pay them no mind because it's all these stories is the same. And these ladies really not victims, the majority of them. That's why their cases never go anywhere at all. This guy can get them heard. Okay, once he represent them, it's going to end up in the newspaper. All right, he got those kind of connections that could get the lady heard. All right, and once this lady get heard, you'll get destroyed because it'll be 200 ladies wrapped around the corner by the end of the day once he casts that net.
Lawsuits. So what does that say? That says the lawsuits
that's
are
where
all
you're
nonsense.
wrong. I listened to you. And some of
Which of your clients was used in this case?
Let's be clear about something.
Which of your clients was used in this case?
Hey, listen very carefully. If the alleged assault happened in LA, there was nobody flown in, there was nobody coerced and trafficked across state lines, they wouldn't use the client, obviously. These cases that we have filed in New York are filed under a New York statute for sexual assault and sexual abuse. That's completely different than transportation for prostitution or for sexual trafficking, and certainly has nothing to do with RICO. So you just made this grand conclusion that, the U.S. attorney talked to a.
See, Tony Buzbee talking to the wrong person. He talking to Vlad, who really can't defend the point. So I'm going to defend the point for Vlad. Okay, if any of those people the federal government talked to could prove what they were saying, your clients saying happened to them, it would have been called relevant conduct, and they would have put it on. All right, but they couldn't believe none of them. All right, they could probably stand right there all on their own and disprove most of your clients. 90% of your clients, they could stand right there and disprove it without even leaving their phones. Okay? Yeah, they could have used them even though they wasn't in the sex trafficking. They would have used it just to show relevant conduct. They could have done that, but it wouldn't have helped them with your clients.
The U.S. attorney talked to a few of these folks and decided they had no credibility. You are flat out wrong in that respect, because
None of them were used. None of them were used. How am I wrong if none of them were used?
Decided is that there was nothing that happened across state lines, and there was no sexual trafficking, which is what the case was all about. So it has nothing to do with whether these people were credible or not. Their case is a civil case alleging state law claims.
Let me explain something to you, family. If any of them clients he got had any ounce of proof that they was drugged, coerced, under threat of violence, oh, they would have couldn't have waited. They would have made their life beautiful until the trial. Okay, the government would have. Believe that, and they would have put him on as evidence of relevant conduct. All right, he known to do this. They couldn't use none of your clients. Yeah, Vlad just don't know.
The case that was brought by the U.S. attorney, and frankly, that's not a case that could be brought by the U.S. attorney, and which
Tony,
is the point
your
that
own client accused Jay-Z and Diddy of raping her when she was 13, and we all saw it was all nonsense. It was absolutely false. It was absolutely false. She said Good Charlotte was there. They weren't there. She was 13.
Vlad better walk light, because he know this guy gonna be gunning for him. But Vlad backed by some serious people.
Weren't there.
She was 13 years old. Her own father said it was all nonsense. Jay-Z sued you over that. Come on. Like you have a long history, not credible give you a little
people.
bit of information,
a long history.
All these broad
a long history.
You don't even know what you're talking about.
If you want,
Vlad better be ready. All right, because this dude gonna be gunning for Vlad. But Vlad telling the truth, bro. He don't win no cases. He just squeeze people. All right, and people know he could get these ladies heard. He one of the people that could get these ladies' stories heard. All right, and stop the process of ruining your life.
All these broad
a long history.
You don't even know what you're talking about.
If you want a single lawsuit with any of these people,